The wrought iron gates, ancient and ornate, swung open with a whisper of aged metal, revealing a winding gravel path, bordered by cypress trees, that stood like solemn sentinels. Elara gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white for a fleeting second before she consciously relaxed them. The journey had been long, winding through sun-drenched valleys, and past olive groves that shimmered silver-green in the late afternoon light. Now, as her rental car ascended the final curve, the full splendor of the Pellegrino estate unfolded before her. It wasn't merely a vineyard. It was a testament to time, a sprawling, honey-colored stone villa nestled amidst meticulously manicured gardens, its terracotta roof tiles glowing with the warmth of the setting sun. Beyond, row upon row of grapevines stretched in verdant waves, cascading down the gentle slopes towards a distant hazy horizon, where the sea was rumored to glitter. A faint, sweet scent, earth, grapes, and something indefinably floral drifted through her open window, a welcoming embrace. Elara parked her car in a shaded courtyard, where ancient flagstones were softened by moss. The air here was cooler, hushed. She unfastened her seatbelt, her movements unhurried, allowing herself a moment to simply en by in this place. As an art conservator, her life was often spent poring over dusty relics in climate-controlled rooms, deciphering the silent narratives of history. This assignment, assessing the newly discovered frescoes within the estate's oldest wing, felt less like work, and more like an invitation into a secret world. She stepped out, stretching, her linen dress rustling softly against her legs. The scent of jasmine was stronger here, mingling with the subtle aroma of aged stone. Her gaze drifted upwards, tracing the elegant lines of the villa, the intricate carvings around arched windows, the way the light played across the weathered facade. It felt alive, breathing with stories untold. A figure emerged from the shadows of an archway, moving with an effortless grace that immediately drew her attention. He was tall, his silhouette defined against the golden light, and as he approached, Elara felt a subtle shift in the atmosphere, a quiet hum of presence. He wasn't overtly handsome in a conventional polished way, but there was an intensity to his eyes, a rugged artistry to his features that was far more captivating. Dark hair, slightly disheveled, as if he'd just run a hand through it, framed a strong jawline and a mouth that hinted at both amusement and gravity. He wore a simple unbuttoned white linen shirt over a dark t-shirt, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms corded with muscle, and dark trousers. It was a relaxed attire, yet worn with an undeniable elegance. "Miss Thorne?" His voice was a low timbre, rich and resonant, carrying the faintest hint of an accent Elara couldn't quite place, perhaps Italian, perhaps something more global, refined by travel. It was a voice that seemed to settle around her, warm and inviting. "Julian Pellegrino, I presume?" Elara offered a small polite smile, extending her hand. Her pulse, she noticed, had picked up a fraction. His hand enveloped hers, firm and warm, a brief, electrifying contact that sent a shiver tracing its way up her arm. His thumb brushed lightly over her knuckles before he released her. "Indeed. Welcome to Pellegrino. I trust your journey was pleasant?" "It was beautiful," she replied, her gaze meeting his. His eyes were the color of dark amber, intelligent and deeply observant, holding hers for a beat longer than strictly necessary. A flicker of something passed between them. Recognition? Curiosity? An unspoken question. "Good. We've been anticipating your arrival," he said, the corner of his mouth tilting in a half smile that softened the intensity of his gaze. "Come, let me show you to your quarters. You must be tired." He gestured towards a smaller, ivy-clad building adjacent to the main villa, connected by a stone archway draped with ancient wisteria. "We thought the guest house would offer you more privacy, and a closer proximity to your subjects." As he led the way, his stride long and unhurried, Elara found herself studying him, surreptitiously at first, then more openly. There was a groundedness about him, an intrinsic connection to the land and the history around them. He moved with the quiet confidence of a man entirely comfortable in his own skin, in his own domain. The air around him seemed to hum with a subtle energy. The guest house was a revelation. It was a haven of understated luxury, with high-beamed ceilings, cool stone floors and windows that framed breathtaking views of the vineyards. A large, comfortable bed dominated the sleeping area, draped in crisp white linen, and a small, inviting sitting room opened onto a private terrace bathed in the last golden rays of the sun. A vase of freshly cut jasmine sat on a bedside table, its heady fragrance filling the air. "This is magnificent, Julian," Elara said, turning to him, genuinely surprised and touched by the thoughtfulness. "We like our guests to feel at home," he replied, his gaze sweeping over the room, as if ensuring everything was to her liking. His eyes lingered on her for a moment, a warmth in their depths that made her skin prickle with a pleasing awareness. "Please, make yourself comfortable. We dine at 8, a casual affair tonight, just us." "Just us?" The words slipped out before she could censor them, a faint blush rising to her cheeks. He chuckled, a low, pleasant sound. "Just us. I find it's the best way to properly introduce someone to the spirit of Pellegrino, and of course, to discuss the frescoes. They are, after all, why you've journeyed all this way." His eyes held a knowing glint, as if he understood the deeper implications of her question and found them amusing. "Of course," managed, feeling a sudden heat that had nothing to do with the setting sun. "Thank you, Julian." He gave a slight nod, his gaze falling once more to her hand before he turned and left, his quiet footsteps echoing softly on the stone path outside. Elara watched him go, a strange sense of anticipation blossoming in her chest. She took a long, hot shower, letting the steam loosen the tension from her shoulders. The bathroom was a sanctuary of marble and polished chrome, with a large rain shower that felt like standing under a warm waterfall. The jasmine scent from the bedroom mingled with the delicate aroma of the provided luxury toiletries. As she dried her hair, she found herself humming, a rare occurrence. This place, and its owner, had already begun to work their quiet magic. For dinner, she chose a silk dress, the color of twilight, simple in its cut but elegant. It flowed softly around her curves, hinting rather than revealing. She left her hair down, a cascade of auburn waves that caught the light, and added only a pair of small pearl earrings. When she emerged onto the terrace of her guest house, the world had transformed. The sun had dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of fiery orange and soft lavender. The vineyards were now a shadowy tapestry, dotted with the first twinkling lights of the estate. A soft breeze carried the scent of night-blooming flowers and distant wood smoke. Julian was waiting for her on the main villa's grand terrace, which overlooked the valley. He stood by a low stone wall, a glass of wine in his hand, gazing out at the deepening twilight. He had changed into a dark, impeccably tailored jacket over a fine knit shirt, and his dark trousers. The refined attire only accentuated his inherent magnetism. He turned as he heard her approach, and his gaze swept over her, a slow, appreciative journey that made her feel exquisitely seen. "Elara," he said, his voice a murmur against the growing hush of the evening. The way he pronounced her name, drawing out the syllables, made it sound like a secret, a soft melody. "You look breathtaking." A warmth spread through her, a blush that she couldn't suppress. "And you, Julian, look rather dashing yourself." He offered her a charming smile, a flash of white teeth in the dimming light. "Please, join me." He gestured to a small table set for two, bathed in the soft glow of flickering candles, far from the main dining hall. It was intimate, private. He poured her a glass of wine, a deep ruby red that shimmered in the candlelight. "This is our Luna Nera, Black Moon, a robust Sangiovese from the oldest vines on the estate. I thought it appropriate for our first evening." Elara took a sip. The wine was complex, rich with notes of dark fruit and earth, a hint of spice. It warmed her from the inside out. "It's exquisite, Julian, like liquid velvet." He watched her, a subtle satisfaction in his eyes. "I'm glad you approve. Wine, like art, requires patience, passion, and a deep understanding of its soul. A philosophy I can certainly appreciate," she replied, meeting his gaze across the flickering candlelight. The air between them was charged, a delicate tension that was both exhilarating and a little unnerving. The conversation flowed easily, surprisingly so. They spoke of art, of history, of the delicate balance between preservation and progress. Julian revealed a depth of knowledge that went beyond mere ownership. He had a profound appreciation for the artistic heritage embedded within his family's land. "The frescoes you'll be assessing," he said, leaning slightly forward, his voice lowering conspiratorially, "they were uncovered during the restoration of the old chapel. Hidden behind a false wall for centuries. We suspect they date back to the 13th century, perhaps even earlier. A true marvel, but incredibly fragile." "That's often the way with such discoveries," Ilara mused, swirling the wine in her glass. "The older, the more vulnerable. Like whispers from the past, easily lost if not handled with immense care." His eyes held hers. "Whispers. Yes, that's precisely it. They whisper tales of lives lived, beliefs held, loves perhaps." His voice softened on the last word, and the candlelight seemed to dance in his dark eyes. A platter of local cheeses, cured meats, and fresh figs was brought out, followed by a light pasta dish with wild mushrooms. Each bite was a revelation, the flavors, simple yet profound, perfectly paired with the wine. They ate slowly, savoring not just the food, but the shared silence, the comfortable rhythm of their conversation. As the plates were cleared, Julian leaned back in his chair, a relaxed posture that somehow still exuded power. "Tell me, Ilara, what drew you to conservation? It seems a profession born of both immense patience and a deep, almost romantic reverence for what has been." Ilara smiled, a genuine, unbidden warmth spreading through her. "I suppose it's that very reverence. To touch something created centuries ago. To understand the hand that made it. The stories it holds. It feels like stepping outside of time. And the patience, yes, that's essential. It's about listening to what the art needs, not imposing your will upon it." "Listening," he repeated, his gaze thoughtful. "An art in itself, often forgotten in our noisy world." He paused, his eyes lingering on her lips. "And what does Ilara Thorne listen for, when she's not listening to the silent whispers of ancient art?" The question, so personal, caught her off guard. She felt a blush creep up her neck. I suppose I listen for authenticity. For moments that feel real, unvarnished." She met his gaze, feeling suddenly vulnerable, yet compelled to be honest. "And for beauty, in all its forms." "Authenticity," he murmured, his voice a low caress. "A rare and precious commodity. And beauty, yes. I see you have an eye for it, Ilara." His gaze swept over her again, lingering on the subtle curve of her collarbone, the rise and fall of her chest, before returning to her eyes. The intensity of his look was a tangible thing, a warm current passing between them. The candles had burned lower, casting longer, softer shadows. The air had grown cooler, the stars brighter, a vast tapestry of diamonds above them. The scent of jasmine was everywhere, thick and intoxicating. "Would you care for a digestivo?" Julian asked, his voice a little huskier now. "A limoncello, perhaps, or a grappa from our own distilleries?" "A limoncello would be lovely," Ilara replied, her voice a little breathy. She felt a delicious languor settling over her, a heady mix of wine, good food, and the potent presence of the man across from her. He rose smoothly, his movements fluid, and disappeared momentarily into the villa. Ilara watched the space where he had been, her mind buzzing with a quiet excitement. This wasn't just a professional assignment anymore. It was something else, something unexpected, unfolding slowly in the heart of this ancient, whispering estate. He returned with 2 small chilled glasses, each holding a vibrant sun-yellow liquid. He handed one to her, their fingers brushing again, a spark that resonated through her. "To authenticity," he said, raising his glass. "And to the beauty you find." "To whispers," she responded, her voice barely above a murmur. Her eyes locked with his. She took a sip of the limoncello. It was sweet, sharp, and intensely citrusy, a perfect counterpoint to the richness of the evening. He set his glass down, and for a moment the silence stretched, charged with unspoken meanings. He reached across the table, his hand covering hers, his thumb tracing a slow, deliberate path over her skin. The touch was light, yet incredibly potent, sending a ripple of sensation through her. "Illyra," he began, his voice barely audible, his eyes dark and compelling. "The frescoes can wait until morning. Tonight I thought perhaps we could take a walk. The moon is almost full, and the vineyards are magnificent under its light." Her breath hitched. The thought of walking through the moonlit vineyards with him, feeling the cool night air, the earth beneath her feet, his hand a warm anchor on hers, it was an irresistible pull. "I would like that very much, Julian," she whispered, her fingers instinctively curling around his. He rose, pulling her gently to her feet. The simple act of standing so close, his warmth radiating towards her, was intoxicating. He kept her hand in his as they walked, leaving the candlelit terrace behind, stepping into the deeper shadows of the night. The gravel crunched softly under their feet, the only sound apart from the distant chirping of crickets. The air in the vineyard was cool, and smelled of damp earth and ripening grapes, a primal, intoxicating scent. Moonlight bathed the rows of vines in a silvery glow, transforming the landscape into an ethereal dreamscape. Julian led her along a narrow path, his presence a comforting, thrilling anchor beside her. He didn't speak, nor did she. There was no need for words. The silence was eloquent, filled with the rustling of leaves in the gentle breeze, the distant hoot of an owl, and the palpable thrum of their shared awareness. His hand in hers was strong, reassuring. She felt a profound sense of peace, yet also a rising tide of excitement, a delicious anticipation. They stopped at a small clearing on a slight rise, overlooking the entire valley. The villa glowed softly in the distance, a beacon in the darkness. Above them, the sky was a velvet expanse, dusted with countless stars. Julian turned to her, his hand slowly sliding from hers, up her arm, to cup her elbow. His other hand went to her waist, drawing her gently closer until she was almost touching him. The warmth of his body seeped into hers, and she could feel the faint beat of his heart against her side. His gaze dropped to her lips, and the air crackled with an unspoken longing. Her own lips parted slightly, her breath catching in her throat. She could feel the heat radiating from him, the subtle scent of his skin, the wine, the night. "Illyra," he murmured, his voice a low growl, barely a whisper. His fingers tightened almost imperceptibly on her waist, pulling her flush against him. Her breasts brushed against his chest, a soft, yielding pressure that sent a jolt through her. He leaned in, slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, but she found she couldn't. Her eyes fluttered shut as his breath, warm and soft, ghosted over her face. The scent of him, earthy, masculine, utterly intoxicating, filled her senses. Her hands, without conscious thought, rose to rest on his chest, feeling the solid warmth beneath her fingertips. His lips, soft and hesitant at first, found hers. It was a tentative exploration, a question, a promise. Then, as she responded, a subtle shift in pressure, a deepening of the kiss. It was slow, tender, yet charged with an electric intensity that made her knees feel weak. A sigh escaped her, a soft sound swallowed by the vastness of the night. He kissed her with a languid passion, tasting of wine and moonlight, a promise of deeper desires. His thumb stroked the small of her back, a gentle hypnotic rhythm that pulled her even closer, until there was no space left between them. The world narrowed to the feel of his lips on hers, the warmth of his body, the soft whisper of the wind through the vines. It was a kiss that spoke of ancient longings, of a connection forged under the silent, watchful gaze of the Pellegrino estate. And it was only the beginning. And it was only the beginning. His lips deepened the kiss, a soft exploration that quickly ignited into a fervent plea, an answer to the silent symphony of desire that had been building between them all evening. Her hands, which had rested lightly on his chest, now found purchase in the silken strands at the nape of his neck, pulling him closer still, as if to absorb him entirely. The world beyond them, The vast expanse of the Italian night, the whispering vines, the distant hoot of an owl, faded into an indistinct hum. All that remained was the exquisite pressure of his mouth on hers, the dizzying scent of his skin, a heady mix of warm earth, and the rich, dark notes of the wine they'd shared. A soft sigh escaped her, a sound that was half surrender, half burgeoning hunger. His tongue, a velvet enticement, traced the seam of her lips, asking for entry, and she parted them without hesitation. The taste of him was intoxicating, a complex blend of strength and tenderness, an echo of the bold, sun-drenched landscape and the quiet, profound depths of the man himself. It was a flavor she instinctively knew she would crave, a taste that promised to etch itself onto the very fabric of her being. His fingers, which had been gently stroking the small of her back, now drifted higher, tracing the delicate curve of her spine beneath the light fabric of her dress. Each touch was a spark, igniting a trail of goosebumps that shivered down her arms, across her shoulders, and settled in a delicious tremor deep within her core. He pulled back slightly, just enough for his gaze to lock with hers, his eyes, dark pools in the moonlight, reflecting a heat that mirrored her own. A silent question hung between them, a profound understanding that needed no words. "Come with me," he murmured, his voice a low, husky rumble that vibrated through her, a sensual invitation. She didn't speak, couldn't speak, her breath still catching in her throat, her mind a beautiful haze of sensation. Instead, she simply nodded, her eyes never leaving his, a silent pact forged in the glow of the moon. He took her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers, a perfect fit that felt both thrillingly new and anciently familiar. His thumb brushed over her knuckles, a small, reassuring gesture that spoke volumes. He led her away from the wrought iron balcony, away from the intoxicating scent of the night-blooming jasmine that climbed the old stone walls. Their footsteps were soft on the cool marble floors of the hallway, a hushed echo in the silent house. The Pellegrino estate, usually bustling with the quiet hum of life, now felt like a sacred private space, a sanctuary just for them. Moonlight streamed in through tall arched windows, casting long, dramatic shadows that danced with their movement, creating an ethereal pathway. Her heart beat a rhythmic tattoo against her ribs, a drum solo of anticipation. Every nerve ending felt alive, heightened, humming with a vibrant energy. The air around them seemed to thicken, charged with an unspoken tension, a delightful current that pulled them inexorably forward. She felt a lightness in her step, as if she were floating, suspended in this magical moment. He didn't rush. His pace was deliberate, unhurried, as if savoring each step of their journey, prolonging the exquisite ache of anticipation. He kept her hand firmly in his, a constant, comforting connection. As they passed a dimly lit alcove, he paused, turning to face her, his free hand reaching out to cup her cheek. His touch was tender, reverent, his thumb stroking the soft skin just beneath her eye. "You are beautiful," he whispered, his gaze sweeping over her face, drinking her in, as if seeing her for the very first time, and yet knowing her for a lifetime. A blush bloomed on her cheeks, a warmth that had nothing to do with the night air and everything to do with the honesty in his eyes. She leaned into his touch, her own hand rising to cover his on her face, pressing it closer. The simple intimacy of the moment was almost overwhelming, a testament to the profound connection that was rapidly forming between them. He kissed her again, a slow, lingering press of lips that spoke of patience and deep affection, a promise of the pleasures yet to come. It was a kiss that didn't demand, but offered a gentle reassurance that their journey together was one of mutual desire and respect. When he finally drew back, his eyes were still locked on hers, a silent question once more, an invitation to continue. She tightened her grip on his hand, her answer clear. He smiled, a slow, sensual curve of his lips that sent a fresh wave of heat through her. He turned, and they continued their silent procession through the grand hallways, past ancestral portraits that seemed to watch their progress with knowing eyes, past antique furniture that held centuries of secrets. The air grew cooler, As they ascended a wide, sweeping staircase, the marble smooth and cool beneath her feet. The scent of old wood and beeswax mingled with the lingering fragrance of jasmine that had clung to her hair and clothes. Each step felt like a step further into a dream, a descent into a world where only their desires existed. Finally, he paused at a heavy carved wooden door. He released her hand for a moment, just long enough to turn the ornate brass handle. The door swung open silently, revealing a room bathed in the soft, golden glow of candlelight. It was his room, she realized, a space imbued with his essence, his quiet strength. His refined taste. The air was warm and subtly scented with something earthy and masculine, perhaps sandalwood or cedar, a scent that was uniquely him. A large four-poster bed dominated the room, draped with sheer white fabric that billowed gently in the faint breeze from an open window. Beyond the window, the moon hung like a pearl in the inky sky, illuminating the distant vineyards. He stepped aside, a silent gesture inviting her in. She entered, her gaze sweeping around the room, taking in the rich textures, the muted colors, the elegant simplicity. It felt both grand and intimate, a perfect reflection of the man who inhabited it. He closed the door softly behind them. The click of the latch a definitive sound that sealed them within their private world. The silence that followed was not empty, but rich with unspoken anticipation. He moved towards her, his eyes never leaving hers, a slow, deliberate approach that built the tension to an almost unbearable crescendo. When he reached her, he didn't immediately touch her. Instead, he simply stood before her, his height towering over her, his presence enveloping her. He lifted his hand, his fingers gently brushing a stray lock of hair from her face, tucking it behind her ear. His touch was so light, so tender, it felt like a caress from a butterfly's wing, yet it sent shivers cascading through her. "Are you cold?" he asked, his voice soft, concerned. She shook her head, her voice still lost somewhere in the depths of her longing. "No." It was barely a whisper, a breath of sound. His gaze dropped to her lips, lingering there, a silent question. She tilted her head slightly, offering herself her unspoken answer. He leaned in slowly, allowing her to meet him halfway, to revel in the delicious anticipation. His lips brushed hers, a feather-like touch, once, twice, a teasing prelude. Then with a soft groan that seemed to come from the very depths of his soul, he captured her mouth fully, deeply, this time without restraint. The kiss was a revelation, fierce yet tender, demanding yet yielding. His arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her flush against his hard, warm body. She could feel the tautness of his muscles, the steady beat of his heart against hers, a powerful rhythm that echoed her own accelerated pulse. Her hands instinctively found their way to his shoulders, gripping the solid strength beneath her fingertips, then sliding up into his hair, tangling in the soft strands as the kiss deepened, spiraled, consumed. He tilted her head back gently, allowing his lips to roam from her mouth to her jawline, down the sensitive curve of her neck. His stubble, rough and delicious, rasped against her skin, sending exquisite tremors through her. She gasped softly as his mouth found the hollow of her throat, suckling gently, leaving a trail of warmth that blowed outwards, spreading through her veins like liquid fire. Her fingers tightened in his hair, an unconscious urge to pull him closer, to press him deeper into her skin. A low moan escaped her, a sound she barely recognized as her own, a raw expression of the pleasure that was building within her, coiling tighter and tighter. He straightened, his dark eyes still burning with an intense desire as he looked at her, his gaze lingering on the flush that now colored her skin, the slight parting of her lips, the quick rise and fall of her chest. With slow, deliberate movements, he reached for the small zipper at the back of her dress. His knuckles brushed against her bare skin as he slowly, carefully drew the zipper down. The cool air of the room met her skin as the fabric parted, a delicious contrast to the heat that was blossoming within her. She shivered, but it was not from cold. It was from the exquisite vulnerability of the moment, the knowledge that she was about to lay herself bare, not just physically, but emotionally. The dress, a soft flowing silk, slid down her shoulders, pooling at her feet in a soft whisper of fabric. She stood before him in only her delicate lace underthings, feeling exposed, yet utterly safe, utterly desired. He took a step back, his eyes tracing every curve, every line of her body, a look of profound admiration and hunger in their depths. "Magnifica!" he breathed, the Italian word rolling off his tongue like a caress, making her shiver once more. He reached out, his fingers tracing the delicate lace of her bra, the strap over her shoulder. His touch was light, almost hesitant, as if seeking permission, even though her entire being was screaming riot. He unhooked the clasp with practiced ease, and the lace fell away, revealing the soft swell of her breasts. Her breath hitched in her throat as his gaze, warm and appreciative, settled on her. She felt a fierce blush creep up her chest, but she held his gaze, unwilling to look away, unwilling to break the electric current that hummed between them. He reached out, his hands cupping her breasts, his thumbs gently caressing her nipples, which instantly hardened into taut, sensitive peaks. A gasp escaped her, a sound of pure, unadulterated pleasure. The warmth of his hands, the exquisite sensitivity of her skin, sent shockwaves through her. She leaned into his touch, her eyes fluttering closed, savoring the sensation, the sheer thrill of being touched by him, desired by him. He lowered his head, his warm breath ghosting over her skin before his lips found one sensitive peak, suckling gently, teasingly, with a soft groan that reverberated through her entire body. She arched into him, her fingers tangling in his hair once more, holding him close, urging him deeper. His tongue swirled around her, a hot, wet caress that sent sparks flying through her veins, pooling low in her belly. He moved to the other breast, lavishing the same exquisite attention, his hands still supporting her, his body pressed close to hers. The world had narrowed to this moment, this sensation, this man. Every other thought, every other worry, had vanished, replaced by a singular, all-consuming desire. Finally, he lifted his head, his eyes dark with unfulfilled longing, his breath coming in short, ragged gasps. He leaned his forehead against hers, his voice thick with emotion. "I have wanted you from the moment I saw you." Her heart swelled with a powerful surge of emotion. She reached up, her fingers tracing the strong line of his jaw, feeling the warmth of his skin, the slight rasp of his evening stubble. "And I you?" she whispered, her voice husky, raw with her own desire. He straightened, his hands still on her waist, his thumbs tracing circles on her bare skin. He stepped back just enough to create a sliver of space between them, his eyes still devouring her. Then, slowly, deliberately, he began to unbutton his own shirt. Each button, a small, intricate ritual, was undone with a graceful precision that held a sensual weight. Her gaze followed the movement of his fingers, captivated by the slow reveal of his chest. When the last button was undone, he shrugged the shirt from his shoulders, the crisp white fabric falling to the floor in a silent heap. He stood before her, magnificent and powerful, his chest broad and muscled, lightly dusted with dark hair that narrowed as it descended towards his lean waist. She reached out, unable to resist, her fingers tentatively touching the warm skin of his chest. His muscles flexed beneath her touch, a ripple of strength that thrilled her. She splayed her hand over his heart, feeling its strong, steady beat beneath her palm, a living rhythm that mirrored her own. Her fingers explored the hard planes of his abs, the tautness of his skin, the sheer power of his physique. He groaned, a low, guttural sound that was both a surrender and a plea. His hands found the waistband of her delicate lace briefs, his fingers tracing the elastic. He looked into her eyes, a silent question once more, an offering of choice. She nodded, her trust in him absolute, her desire for him overwhelming. With slow, unhurried movements, he slid the lace downwards, over her hips, past her thighs, until it joined the silk dress in a pool on the floor. She stood before him now, completely bare, completely vulnerable, yet feeling more powerful and desired than she ever had in her life. The air around them crackled with an almost palpable energy, a silent hum of anticipation. His gaze swept over her, lingering, appreciating, and she felt a delicious flush spread through her entire body, a warmth that had nothing to do with shyness and everything to do with the intense pleasure of being seen, truly seen, by him. He reached out, his hands settling on her hips, drawing her closer until their bodies were almost touching, separated only by the fabric of his trousers. The heat radiating from his body was intoxicating, a promise of deeper intimacy. He leaned down, his lips brushing her ear, his voice a low, seductive whisper. "Let's get you into bed, Mia Karai." He lifted her into his arms with an ease that belied her weight, her legs instinctively wrapping around his waist. She gasped, a soft cry of surprise and delight, clinging to him, her face buried in the crook of his neck, inhaling his intoxicating scent. He carried her towards the bed, his movements steady and strong. He laid her gently onto the cool, crisp sheets, his eyes never leaving hers. The soft candlelight flickered, casting dancing shadows on the walls, creating an intimate, dreamlike ambience. She watched him as he moved away for a moment, shedding his trousers and then his boxers, revealing the full, magnificent power of his body. He was all lean muscle and sinew, a sculptor's dream, and her breath caught in her throat at the sight of him. He returned to the bed, climbing in beside her, the mattress dipping slightly under his weight. He propped himself on one elbow, gazing down at her, his eyes full of tenderness and a barely restrained hunger. He reached out, his fingers tracing the line of her collarbone, then drifting down her arm, over her hip, to her thigh. "You are exquisite," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion, his gaze burning into hers. She reached for him, her fingers finding the warmth of his skin, pulling him closer. He needed no further invitation. He lowered himself over her, his weight supported by his arms, his chest brushing against her breasts, sending a fresh wave of sensation through her. The feel of his naked skin against hers was electrifying, a profound connection that transcended words. His lips found hers once more, a deep, passionate kiss that spoke of longing, of yearning, of a connection that felt as ancient as the Pellegrino estate itself. His tongue danced with hers, a slow, sensual tango that promised deeper explorations. His hand moved from her thigh, tracing the curve of her hip, then sliding inwards between her legs, finding the soft, sensitive skin there. A shiver ran through her as his fingers brushed against her, a light, teasing touch that sent a jolt of pure pleasure through her core. She arched into his touch, a soft moan escaping her lips, her body trembling with a delicious anticipation. He responded with a low groan, his kiss deepening, his body pressing closer still, their heat mingling, their breaths mingling, their desires intertwining into a singular, all-consuming fire. The night was young, and their journey had only just begun. He lifted her effortlessly into his arms, a possessive growl rumbling in his chest as her legs instinctively wrapped around his waist. Her head fell back, a soft sigh escaping her lips as she gazed up at him, her eyes heavy-lidded with desire. Her pupils dilated, reflecting the flickering candlelight from the distant foyer. He carried her as if she weighed nothing, his stride sure and powerful. The scent of his skin, a heady mix of sandalwood and something uniquely masculine, filling her senses. She buried her face in the crook of his neck, inhaling him, feeling the hard planes of his chest against her breasts, the tremor in his muscles as he moved. He didn't break the kiss until they reached the threshold of what she knew must be his bedroom. The moonlight, silver and ethereal, poured through tall arched windows, painting the opulent room in shades of charcoal and pearl. A vast four-poster bed dominated the space, draped in sheer flowing fabrics that whispered of dreams and secrets. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of old wood and something subtly floral, perhaps from a forgotten bouquet. He lowered her gently but didn't release her. Their bodies remained melded, his hands cupping her derriere, hers still tangled in his hair. His gaze, dark and intense, roamed over her face, lingering on her parted lips, the flush on her cheeks, the pulse fluttering at her throat. "Beautiful," he murmured, his voice a low, husky caress that vibrated through her very bones. "You're breathtaking." A blush deepened on her skin, but she met his gaze without faltering. There was a raw honesty in his eyes that disarmed her, stripping away any pretense. Tonight, she was simply herself, and he saw her, truly saw her, in a way no one ever had. His fingers, warm and skilled, began to trace the line of her jaw, down her neck, over the delicate lace strap of her dress. Each touch was deliberate, a silent promise. She shivered, not from cold, but from the exquisite tension coiling within her. Her fingers, almost unconsciously, went to the buttons of his shirt, fumbling slightly in her eagerness. He chuckled, a deep, rich sound that sent another wave of heat through her. "Alame?" he whispered, his hands leaving her to take her own. With a slow, deliberate grace, he unfastened the tiny pearl buttons that ran down the back of her dress. Each click of a button echoed in the quiet room, a prelude to the unveiling. The fabric began to loosen, to give way, revealing the smooth expanse of her skin beneath. Moonlight kissed her exposed back, highlighting the delicate curve of her spine. She felt the cool air against her skin as the dress eased down, sliding over her shoulders, pooling at her feet in a silken whisper. She stepped out of it, leaving it a shimmering puddle on the floor, standing before him in nothing but her lace underthings. The sheer chemise, delicate and clinging, offered tantalizing glimpses of the curves beneath, while the matching briefs hugged her hips. He devoured her with his eyes, a flicker of raw hunger igniting in their depths. There was no judgment, only pure, unadulterated admiration. His gaze made her feel utterly desirable, utterly cherished. She felt a fierce surge of confidence, a delicious power in her nakedness, in his obvious delight. Then, it was her turn. Her fingers, steadier now, worked on the buttons of his shirt. He stood still, allowing her to undress him, his eyes never leaving hers. The fabric parted, revealing the broad expanse of his chest, taut and muscled, dusted with a fine layer of dark hair that tapered down toward his navel. She trailed her fingertips over the warm skin, feeling the strong beat of his heart beneath her touch. The sensation was intoxicating. He sucked in a sharp breath as her hands moved lower, unbuckling his belt, undoing the button of his trousers. The crisp fabric slid down his hips, revealing the powerful lines of his legs, the lean strength of his thighs. He kicked them off, and then, with a sensual slowness that made her heart pound, he reached for her, pulling her flush against him. The contact was electric. Skin against skin. Her lace-clad body pressed against his hard, naked form. The fabric of her chemise became a thin barrier, a tantalizing whisper between them. She felt the warmth of his body seep into hers, the undeniable evidence of his arousal pressing against her. A soft gasp escaped her lips, and she arched into him, a silent plea. He lowered his head, his lips finding the sensitive skin behind her ear, tracing a path down her neck. "You are exquisite," he murmured, his breath hot against her skin. "Every inch of you." He kissed the hollow of her throat, then moved lower to the swell of her breast above the lace. A shiver coursed through her, her knees weakening. He scooped her up again, carrying her towards the grand bed. The mattress was soft, yielding, shrouded in the fine, cool linen of the sheets. He laid her down gently, hovering over her, his hands braced on either side of her head. The moonlight bathed them both, turning his skin to burnished bronze, hers to alabaster. His gaze swept over her again, lingering on the curve of her breasts beneath the lace, the delicate line of her collarbone, the gentle swell of her belly. He reached out, his fingers brushing the strap of her chemise, then slowly, deliberately he slid it down her arm. The lace whispered as it gave way, revealing more and more of her. He pulled it slowly, drawing it down past her waist, over her hips, until it was just a wisp of fabric clinging to her thighs. Her breath hitched in her throat as he paused, his eyes holding hers, a silent question, a silent promise. Then, with an elegant flourish, he pulled the chemise free, casting it aside. She was completely nude now, vulnerable and exposed, yet she felt no shame. Only an exhilarating sense of liberation. He peeled off her briefs next, his fingers brushing against the most intimate part of her, sending a jolt of pure fire through her core. Her hips lifted instinctively, a silent invitation. When they two were gone, cast to join the chemise, he finally lay beside her, pulling the soft linen sheets up to just above their waists, a flimsy veil against the intensity of their connection. He propped himself up on one elbow, his eyes never leaving hers. He reached out a hand, his fingertips tracing the line of her ribs, then moving upwards, circling the soft mound of her breast. A soft moan escaped her lips as his thumb brushed across her nipple, which hardened instantly under his touch. "I've dreamt of this," he confessed, his voice rough with emotion. "Dreamt of touching you, tasting you, feeling you against me like this." Her own heart swelled with an answering emotion. "And I you," she whispered, her voice thick with desire. She reached up, her fingers tangling in his dark hair, pulling his head down. His lips met hers again, this time with a tender ferocity that stole her breath away. It was a kiss that spoke of longing, of yearning, of a connection that ran deeper than mere physical attraction. His tongue explored the soft cavern of her mouth, intertwining with hers in a slow, sensual dance. His hand moved from her breast, trailing down her belly, resting on the soft curve of her hip. He broke the kiss, moving to kiss her eyelids, her forehead, the tip of her nose. He was worshipping her, every delicate feature, every curve and hollow. His lips descended to her collarbone, then to the hollow of her throat where he lingered, his tongue tracing the frantic pulse there. She arched into him, her body a symphony of sensations, alive with a yearning she had never known. Her hands roamed over his back, feeling the ripple of muscles beneath her fingertips, the smooth, warm expanse of his skin. He moved lower, his lips brushing against her breast, teasing, promising. Then, with a gentle suckling motion, he took one hardened peek into his mouth, drawing a soft cry from her. A wave of exquisite pleasure washed over her, making her toes curl, her body tremble. He suckled deeply, rhythmically, his other hand stroking the other breast, eliciting an equally intense response. She tangled her fingers in his hair, holding him closer, lost in the delicious torment. Her hips began to move instinctively, an unconscious plea, a rhythm of desire building within her. He moved from one breast to the other, lavishing attention on each, driving her further and further to the edge of control. His touch was both tender and demanding, skillful and passionate. Then, slowly, he descended further. His lips trailed a path down her stomach, over her navel, sending shivers through her. She gasped as his hot breath feathered over her most intimate skin, the tender flesh between her thighs. Her body tensed, anticipating, yearning. He paused there, his eyes, dark and intense, locking with hers. There was a raw, primal hunger in his gaze, but also a deep respect, an unspoken question. She answered it with her eyes, with a lift of her hips, with a soft, desperate moan. He smiled, a slow, sensual curve of his lips that promised utter bliss. Then, he lowered his head and his mouth found her. A gasp tore from her throat, raw and unrestrained, as a shockwave of pleasure erupted through her. It was an explosion of sensation, a dazzling, overwhelming tide that swept away all thought, all inhibition. His tongue was skilled, teasing, delving, creating a delicious friction that built and built with astonishing speed. She cried out, her fingers digging into the sheets, her body arching off the bed. The pleasure was too much, yet not enough. She was drowning in it, consumed by it. Every nerve ending in her body seemed to converge on that one point, exquisitely sensitive, exquisitely alive. He continued his exquisite torture, unwavering, persistent, drawing her higher and higher. She was trembling violently now, on the precipice of something vast and unknown. The world narrowed to his touch, his taste, the rhythmic press and swirl of his tongue. A final, earth-shattering wave broke over her, and she cried out his name, a guttural sound she didn't recognize as her own. Her body convulsed, a cascade of pure, unadulterated pleasure that shook her to her very core. She was breathless, spent, utterly blissful, her muscles still twitching with the echoes of sensation. He lifted his head, a triumphant, tender smile gracing his lips. He moved back up the bed, gathering her into his arms, holding her close as her breathing slowly returned to normal. She buried her face in his neck, inhaling his scent, feeling the strong, steady beat of his heart against her ear. "Beautiful," he whispered again, his voice thick with admiration. He kissed her hair, her forehead, her cheek. She felt utterly cherished, utterly loved in that moment. It wasn't just physical, it was an emotional connection that resonated deeply within her. She had never felt so seen, so desired, so utterly aroused. After a few moments of quiet embrace, he shifted, pulling away just enough to look into her eyes. His own were still dark with desire, but there was a softness there now, a tenderness that made her heart ache in the most exquisite way. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice low, his thumb stroking her cheek. It was a question that encompassed so much more than just the physical act. It was about readiness, about consent, about the depth of their connection. She met his gaze, her own eyes shining with unshed tears of emotion and lingering pleasure. She nodded, unable to speak, her throat tight with feeling. She was more than ready. She was desperate. He shifted, rising above her, his powerful frame silhouetted against the moonlight. He parted her thighs gently, his knees settling between hers. The heat of his body, the undeniable evidence of his desire, pressed against her, making her tremble anew. He looked down at her, his eyes filled with a mixture of awe and passion. Then slowly, deliberately, he began to lower himself. She felt the first tentative press, the gentle stretch, the delicious fullness as he began to enter her. Her breath hitched, her body arching towards him, urging him on. He moved with exquisite slowness, allowing her body to adjust, to embrace him fully. A soft moan escaped her lips as he finally, completely filled her. The sensation was overwhelming, profound, a feeling of completeness she had never imagined. Their bodies were perfectly aligned, two halves fitting together into a perfect whole. He paused, resting his forehead against hers, their breaths mingling, their hearts thudding in unison. "You feel incredible," he murmured, his voice hoarse with emotion. She wrapped her legs around his waist, pulling him closer still, her nails digging gently into the muscles of his back. "Don't stop," she whispered, her voice a plea, a demand. He lifted his head, his eyes burning into hers, a primal fire blazing within their depths. "Never," he promised, his voice a low growl. Then, he began to move. Slowly at first, a gentle, rocking rhythm that sent waves of pleasure through her. Her body responded instantly, meeting his thrusts, moving with him in a timeless dance. The bed creaked softly beneath them, a symphony of their passion. The rhythm intensified, becoming more urgent, more demanding. He moved deeper, faster, each thrust taking her higher, closer to the edge once more. She cried out, her head falling back, her eyes squeezed shut, lost in the maelstrom of sensation. His hands were on her hips, guiding her, urging her on. He kissed her fiercely, deeply, his tongue mirroring the movements of his body, their breaths coming in ragged gasps. The air in the room seemed to crackle with their energy, their raw, unbridled desire. She felt the tension building within her again, a familiar coiling deep in her core, but this time it was different, amplified, intertwined with his rhythm, his power. Each thrust was a hammer blow, driving her deeper into pleasure, closer to oblivion. She wrapped her arms around his neck, holding on for dear life, as the world dissolved around them. There was only him, only her, only this incredible, consuming sensation. Her body tightened around him, a fierce, desperate embrace. He groaned, a deep, guttural sound of pure pleasure, his movements becoming more forceful, more urgent. He was close, she could feel it, feel the primal energy radiating from him. With a final, powerful thrust, he cried out her name, his body tensing, shuddering against hers as he found his release deep within her. The waves of pleasure crashed over her simultaneously, a powerful, overwhelming orgasm that left her breathless, trembling, utterly spent. He collapsed onto her, his weight a comforting pressure, his body still convulsing with the aftermath of their shared climax. She held him tightly, her fingers tracing the sweat-slicked skin of his back, her heart overflowing with a myriad of emotions. Joy, contentment, love, and a profound sense of belonging. They lay there for a long time, entangled, breathless, the moonlight still pouring through the window, now painting them in shades of silver and shadow. Their breaths slowly evened out, their heartbeats gradually returning to a calmer rhythm. He shifted, lifting his head to look at her, his eyes soft, tender, filled with an emotion that mirrored her own. He kissed her gently, a lingering, possessive kiss that promised many more nights, many more shared intimacies. "My love," he whispered, the words a soft caress against her lips. "My beautiful, beautiful love." She smiled, a contented sigh escaping her. She pressed a kiss to his shoulder, feeling the warmth of his skin, the comforting weight of his body. The night was far from over, and their journey indeed had only just begun. There was a lifetime of discovery ahead, of shared passion, of deepening connection, and she was ready for every single moment of it. She closed her eyes, utterly content, utterly fulfilled, and drifted into a state of blissful, dream-like awareness. His arms her sanctuary, his presence her peace. The promise of dawn, and all the moments that lay between, stretched out before them, a beautiful, sensual tapestry waiting to be woven. Her awareness, though dreamlike, was exquisitely sharp, attuned to every nuance of his presence. The solid warmth of his body against hers, the gentle rise and fall of his chest beneath her cheek, the rhythmic pulse of his heart, a lullaby in her ear. Each sensation was a thread in the silken tapestry of their shared night. A soft sigh escaped her lips, a whisper of pure contentment. He stirred slightly, his arm tightening around her, a protective, possessive gesture that sent a shiver of pleasure through her. She lifted her head just enough to glimpse his face in the dim light filtering through the window, moonlight painting his strong features in shades of silver and shadow. His eyes were closed, his breathing deep and even, a picture of peaceful slumber. Yet, as if sensing her gaze, a faint smile touched his lips, and his arm shifted, pulling her closer still, until there was no space left between them. Her nose brushed against his jawline, inhaling the intoxicating scent of him. A primal mix of musk, clean skin, and the subtle lingering aroma of their lovemaking. It was a scent that now, irrevocably, belonged to her memories, her desires, her very being. A soft, almost imperceptible whisper escaped him. "Still awake? Love?" His voice, husky with sleep, was a warm caress against her ear. "Just enjoying this," she murmured back, her fingers tracing the warm skin of his chest, feeling the taut muscle beneath. "Enjoying yours." He opened his eyes then, their depths dark and fathomless in the low light, but filled with an undeniable tenderness that made her heart ache with a sweet, profound emotion. He didn't speak, but his gaze was a language unto itself, expressing adoration, gratitude, and a promise of all that was yet to unfold. He leaned down, his lips brushing hers in a feather-like kiss that deepened slowly, languidly, until it was a breath-stealing exploration. It wasn't the fierce, hungry kiss of their initial passion, but something deeper, slower, imbued with a quiet intimacy that spoke volumes. As their lips parted, he nuzzled into her hair, his breath warm against her scalp. "I never knew I could feel this way again," he confessed, his voice rough with emotion. "This complete, this utterly, perfectly connected." Her heart swelled, a wave of tenderness washing over her. She knew exactly what he meant. This wasn't just physical exhilaration, it was a soul-deep resonance, a feeling of coming home to a place she hadn't known she'd been searching for. "Me neither," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "It feels like destiny." He chuckled softly, a low rumble that vibrated through her. Destiny, indeed. Or perhaps just two very lucky people finding their way back to each other, exactly when they needed to. He kissed her temple, then her eyelid, then the corner of her mouth. "Are you comfortable?" She nodded, pressing closer. "More than comfortable, content." "Good," he murmured, his hand gently stroking her hair, then trailing down her back, drawing lazy circles on her skin. The subtle caress ignited a slow, delicious warmth within her, a reawakening of senses that had only just begun to quiet. Her body, still humming from their earlier exertions, responded with a renewed eagerness, a soft, insistent thrum that resonated deep within her core. He felt it too. She knew. His touch grew a little firmer, a little more deliberate, his fingers tracing the curve of her spine, dipping into the small of her back. She arched subtly into his hand, a silent invitation, a testament to the powerful current that still flowed between them. The air in the room, already charged with their lingering passion, seemed to thicken, growing heavy with unspoken desires. He shifted, propping himself up on one elbow, his eyes never leaving hers. The moonlight, now a little brighter, illuminated the desire in his gaze, a smoldering fire that mirrored the one stirring within her. "You are exquisite," he breathed, his voice a low, seductive rumble. "Even more beautiful in the soft light of the night." Her cheeks flushed, a warmth spreading across her skin that had nothing to do with the temperature of the room. He reached out, his thumb gently caressing her lower lip, then tracing the line of her jaw. His touch was electric, sending shivers through her, making her breath catch in her throat. "I want to memorize every inch of you," he confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. "Every curve, every plane, every secret place." His hand moved from her jaw to her neck, then slowly, deliberately, down her shoulder, across her collarbone, toward the swell of her breast. His touch was reverent, exploratory, as if he were discovering a priceless treasure. Her eyes fluttered closed as his fingers brushed against the sensitive skin of her breast, a jolt of pure sensation shooting through her. The world narrowed to the exquisite pleasure of his touch, the warmth of his skin against hers, the intoxicating scent of him. He leaned down, his lips following the path his fingers had blazed, kissing the hollow of her throat, trailing wet, open-mouthed kisses along her collarbone, until he reached the peak of her breast. A gasp escaped her as his mouth closed over her. A soft, suckling pull that sent a wave of pure ecstasy coursing through her. Her fingers tangled in his hair, pulling him closer, arching her back to offer herself more fully to his exquisite ministrations. He teased and tasted, suckling gently, drawing out her pleasure, building the tension with an expert slowness that left her breathless and desperate for more. Her body hummed, a symphony of awakened nerves and burgeoning desire. This second wave of passion was different from the first. It wasn't the explosive release of long-held longing, but a deeper, more intimate exploration, a tender unraveling of layers, a profound connection forged in the quiet solitude of the night. It felt like an act of devotion, a sacred ritual of shared vulnerability and trust. His hand drifted lower, tracing the delicate curve of her waist, settling on her hip, then moving lower still, teasing the sensitive skin of her inner thigh. Her legs parted almost imperceptibly, an instinctive response to his tantalizing touch. His fingers found the soft, warm juncture of her thighs, sending a fresh wave of heat through her. He explored gently, coaxing her open, preparing her for his touch with a tenderness that brought tears to her eyes. "So beautiful," he whispered against her skin, his voice thick with desire. "So ready." And she was. Ready for him, for this profound connection, for every exquisite sensation he could offer. When his fingers finally found her, A soft moan escaped her lips, a sound of pure, unadulterated pleasure. He moved with a slow, deliberate rhythm, each stroke a sweet torment, building the pressure, the warmth, the exquisite ache deep within her. She writhed beneath him, her hips lifting, seeking the deeper, more insistent pressure she craved. He met her unspoken plea, shifting his weight, pressing himself against her, his hardness a thrilling promise against her soft femininity. Her breath hitched, anticipation a tangible thing in the air between them. He entered her slowly, smoothly, a sigh escaping both their lips as their bodies reunited in a perfect, familiar embrace. This time, their rhythm was slower, more languid, a dance of exquisite sensitivity and profound connection. Their eyes remained open, locked in a gaze that spoke of shared ecstasy, of boundless love, of a future unfolding before them. Every thrust was a declaration, every caress a promise. She wrapped her legs around his waist, pulling him deeper, wanting to absorb every inch of him, to meld their very beings into one. The climax, when it came, was a slow, building crescendo, a wave of pure, unadulterated bliss that washed over her, shaking her to her core. She cried out his name, her body arching, trembling, as she surrendered to the overwhelming pleasure. He followed her quickly, his own release a powerful, guttural cry, his body shuddering against hers as he emptied himself into her, a primal act of love and devotion. They lay tangled together, breathless and replete, the gentle aftershocks of their passion rippling through them. Her head rested on his shoulder, her hand clasped in his, their fingers intertwined. The silence that fell between them was not empty, but rich with unspoken understanding, with the echo of their shared ecstasy. Eventually, she drifted into a deep, dreamless sleep, wrapped securely in his arms, feeling utterly safe, cherished, and loved. Ringa. She awoke to the soft glow of dawn, the room bathed in a pearly light that softened every edge. The first thing she registered was the warmth of his body spooned against hers, his arm still protectively around her waist, his breath a gentle whisper against her hair. A profound sense of peace settled over her, deeper and more abiding than any she had known. She stirred, stretching languidly, feeling the pleasant ache in her muscles, a sweet reminder of the night's passion. He groaned softly behind her, tightening his embrace. "Morning, sleeping beauty," he murmured, his voice still husky with sleep, but laced with a playful tenderness. She turned in his arms, her eyes meeting his. They were clear and bright, filled with a warmth that made her heart flutter. "Morning?" she replied, her voice soft and a little raspy. She reached up, her fingers gently tracing the stubble along his jawline. He leaned in, capturing her lips in a long, lingering kiss that was both tender and awakening. It tasted of sleep and desire, of new beginnings. "Did you sleep well?" he asked, his thumb caressing her cheek. "Perfectly," she confessed, a blush rising on her cheeks. "The best sleep I've had in years." He smiled, a genuine heartwarming smile that reached his eyes. "Me too. I haven't slept like that in, I don't know how long, like coming home." The words hung in the air, weighted with meaning. It was more than just a good night's sleep. It was the profound rest that comes from finding your place, your person. "What do you want to do today?" she asked, her voice light, but her gaze searching his, looking for an answer, a direction for their new journey. He pulled her closer, pressing a kiss into her hair. "Anything, everything, as long as it's with you." He paused, then lifted his head, his eyes serious now. "I meant what I said last night. This feels like the beginning of something truly extraordinary. I don't want to let it go." Her heart swelled with happiness, a joyful ache in her chest. "I don't want to either," she whispered, her own eyes welling up with emotion. "This is everything I never knew I was missing." He took her face in his hands, his thumbs stroking her cheeks. "Then let's not miss another moment. Let's explore this lifetime of discovery, together." He leaned in again, and this time the kiss was a silent vow, a promise of shared mornings, whispered secrets, and endless nights of passion and profound connection. It was a promise of building a life, a future. One tender moment, one shared laugh, one passionate embrace at a time. The sun, now fully risen, streamed through the window, painting the room in hues of gold, illuminating their intertwined bodies, their loving gaze, their hopeful smiles. The world outside was waking, but for them, a new world had just begun. Their journey, indeed, had only just begun, and she was ready for every single moment of it. His arms her sanctuary, his presence her peace, their shared future, a beautiful sensual tapestry, waiting to be woven, thread by precious thread.